Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to our study this morning, which is from Revelation chapter 6, and we start at verse 12 this morning, continuing with the 7 seals. We're up to the 6th seal, and we have some history here to begin with, to see that this prophecy of Revelation and this verse has also been fulfilled like the previous 5 seals. And it is a trick of Satan to try to put everything in Revelation a long, long way back in the past, or to put it into the future and then make his own interpretation on how that will be fulfilled. But it's important to follow the sequences in the Word of God and to understand that most of Revelation has already been fulfilled. The Antichrist has already been here. The beast has already been here, and that he will be re-emerging. He's here today too, of course, but he will be re-emerging in power. He lacks the power to do what he would like to do. And it's the same with these events. The earthquake that we're going to study now has already taken place. So let's go to verse 12 of Revelation 6, and we read, "And I beheld, when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casts her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind." So we'll remember the 5th seal closed. Put here the 5th seal. It closed with the souls under the altar. And as we remember from last week, these were the martyrs. And there were martyrs right throughout the 1260 years of papal dominance. And these martyrs, at the end of time, were calling out symbolically that they could be, I suppose, revenged, or that justice could be done concerning the way in which they died. These martyrs would also have been forgiving to their persecutors if their persecutors repented too. So anyway, from the time of the Reformation in particular, but also well before then too, there were lots and lots of martyrs. But certainly this brings us right up to almost the end of the 1260 years, which is brought up again and again in the prophetic writings of Revelation. To 1798 it finishes. But the persecutions for the most part stopped before that time, and so we have this earthquake that is mentioned here, and it was no ordinary earthquake. It was a huge earthquake, and it's called the Lisbon earthquake. And this took place in 1755. We're going to read some short pieces on the Lisbon earthquake from a book called Daniel and the Revelation by a man called Uriah Smith, who was a biblical historian. He was someone who was good at matching events that took place with the Bible. But he was building on what other men had written as well. So the first event under this seal is the Lisbon earthquake, and we'll just read a little bit about the extent of this earthquake. The great earthquake of 1755 extended over a tract of at least 4 millions of square miles. 4 millions of square miles. So this earthquake was a huge earthquake. There was roughly 150,000 people living in Lisbon at the time of this earthquake, of whom around 90,000 died in that earthquake. And the earthquake caused a tidal wave which reached 50 feet high. And of course the buildings back then were not as strong as today, so the buildings crumbled down, people were trapped in the buildings and in the churches too. Many rushed to the churches. The churches fell on top of them. And this earthquake was felt not only in Europe, was felt all the way through Europe. It was most severe around Portugal, Spain and around there. But it was severe all through Europe, and particularly in North Africa. But the whole of Africa felt the shake, basically. So the whole of Africa. It was also felt in America. It was felt in the West Indies. And in other parts of the world as well. It was a huge earthquake, that there had been no recorded earthquake that was as extensive as this one. And so this is the beginning of the sixth seal. Begins with this earthquake. And then, as we saw, we have, after this earthquake, we have the dark day. And the moon appeared as blood. And this happened in 1780. 1780. Now this was more locally located in North America, and particularly around New England there. Now the first one, this earthquake went to a very huge section of the world, as you can see. And there was tidal waves, the tsunami, which we call it today, or a tidal wave, which came with it and caused enormous destruction. But the dark day was more in North America, and particularly centred around New England. And you may ask, why would God give a sign that is more localized? But the point is that this is the area in North America where people were studying the Bible the most. And they were looking for signs in the Bible. When the Lisbon earthquake happened, then they were looking for the next sign which would come after that. And most of the people who were looking for that sign were concentrated in North America. The pilgrims, the Protestants who came out of Europe, and then they went to America to escape persecution. So we read about the dark day in verse 12. I'll just read it again. And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And this great dark day was so dark that the animals went back to sleep. The darkness started about 10 a.m. in the morning. The animals went back to sleep, like the roosters and the chooks and those sort of animals. The animals that are nocturnal went to rest again. The wild animals did the same. They say it was so dark that if you held a white piece of paper 6 inches away from your face, you couldn't see it. It was that bad. So people lit their candles again, and they went through the day. People thought that the end of the world was coming. That's what they thought back then. Now the next one is the stars, the falling stars. And the falling stars took place on November the 13th, 1833. And this, you can look this up on the internet. You'll see that this was a great event too. It's actually shooting stars. We can read something about it in here too. Okay, if we go to page 447 of the same book, we read, "The most sublime phenomenon of shooting stars of which the world has furnished any record was witnessed throughout the United States on the morning of the 13th of November 1833. The entire extent of this astonishing exhibition has not been precisely ascertained, but it covered no inconsiderable portion of the Earth's surface. The first appearance was that of fireworks of the most imposing grandeur, covering the entire vault of heaven with myriads of fireballs resembling skyrockets. They were bright, gleaming and incessant, and they fell thick as the flakes of the early snows of December. To the splendours of this celestial exhibition, the most brilliant skyrockets and fireworks of art bear less relation than the twinkling of the most tiny star to the broad glare of the sun. The whole heavens seemed in motion and suggested to some the awful grandeur of the image employed in the Apocalypse upon the opening of the sixth seal, when the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree causes her untimely figs, when she casteth her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind." So you can look that up in your own time if you want to know more about that. We could read some more passages. We want to bring out these points to see that this has already happened. Some people, as I said earlier, looking in the wrong time for these events. But the earthquake was the greatest earthquake up until that point of time. And there'll be another great earthquake in the future when Jesus comes. And we'll probably have time to get to that too, so we can compare these earthquakes. The last earthquake will be extremely great and will cover the whole earth. Okay, let's continue now. We're up to verse 14. Now we want to realise that we are living today between verses 13 and 14. And one person said to me, well, all these signs will be repeated again before verse 14 is fulfilled. And I cannot see that because God has already given those signs. God wants us to study into history. He wants us to be aware. Don't think because you live in the modern age that everything is in Revelation is going to happen while you're alive. And this is where people make a great mistake. They look for things in the present time which have already been fulfilled, and vice versa. They look in the past for things which are yet to be fulfilled. So we must be careful to build on a solid rock. It's a revelation. These things have been revealed to have happened in the past, what we have read so far. But the next thing has not yet happened. And it's obvious that it hasn't happened yet. So let's read verse 14. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. Wow. This is triggered, as we shall see, by some further events. Verse 15. So basically the heaven is rolled back. That's the heavens above us. It's not God's heaven. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. So why did they do that? Because Jesus is coming. This is the time of Jesus coming. And said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? So this departing, as the heavens departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, can be helped. We can be helped in our understanding by seeing what took place, and that is an earthquake. So let's turn now to the book of Hebrews, where the same event is mentioned. In Hebrews chapter 12, and we want to go to verses 25 to 27. 25 to 27. See that you refuse not him that speaks. For if they escape not who refused him that spoke on earth, much more shall they not escape, shall not we escape, if we turn away from him that speaks from heaven. So when Jesus speaks from heaven, this is when this event takes place, whose voice then shook the earth, and now he hath promised, saying, Yet once more I shake not the earth only, but also heaven. So when Jesus comes and his voice speaks, it will shake also heaven. As I read that, I think perhaps that is the heaven of heavens as well, but certainly it will shake the heavens above us too. So this is a mighty shaking. It's the voice of Christ as he speaks, as he comes to the earth. Let's go now to Joel. Joel chapter 3 verse 16. Joel 3 verse 16, The Lord also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake. But the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. So when the Lord roars out of Zion and utters his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake, that will happen at that time too. It's another portrayal of that. The next one is found in the book of Revelation chapter 16 and verse 17. Revelation chapter 16 and verse 17. And this is after the close of probation, of course, when Jesus comes, when the plagues are happening. And this is the seventh plague. And the seventh plague poured out his vial into the air, and there was a great voice out of the temple of heaven. Yes, so it comes from the temple of heaven, from the throne, saying, It is done. And there were voices and thunders and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake, and so great. And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God, to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. And every island fell away, and the mountains were not found. So it's the same event. Because remember what it said about the islands in chapter 6. It says, I'll just have to go back there, sorry, I thought I had my finger in it. It says there, verse 14, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. So it's the same event being spoken about in Revelation 16. So also, if we go to Jeremiah chapter 25, Jeremiah was also given an insight into this as well. Jeremiah 25 and verses 30 to 33. Therefore prophesy thou against them all these words, and say unto them, The Lord shall roar from on high, and utter his voice from his holy habitation. He shall mightily roar upon his habitation. He shall give a shout as they that tread the grapes against all the inhabitants of the earth. A noise shall come even to the ends of the earth, for the Lord hath a controversy with the nations. He will plead with all flesh. He will give them that are wicked to the sword, saith the Lord. And then there's more on that, but that illustrates our point there. Let's go also to the book of Isaiah, where this is also spoken about. Isaiah 24. Isaiah 24, verses 19 to 21. The earth is utterly broken down. The earth is clean, dissolved. The earth is moved exceedingly. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage. And the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth. So the high ones and the kings of the earth, and many of these high ones and kings of the earth are oppressing people at this time too. But that oppression will get worse as the time in which we live unfolds, until they become very wicked indeed. So we see that this is an important time that we're living in between verse 13 and verse 14. And all these other things will be fulfilled as the rest of this book has been fulfilled. There's no doubt about it. Now it's not God that causes these things to happen. No, God is a God of love, and he is trying to prevent people from going so deep into sin and from rejecting him. But when Jesus comes, he comes in response to a problem. And that problem is the persecution of his people. He comes to rescue his people from the wicked. Now, the 7 last plagues can only begin when Jesus leaves the sanctuary in heaven. And that is the signal that the 7 last plagues will begin. And that is the time of the close of probation for all men, because the wicked have determined to do wickedly only and to destroy the people of God. And Jesus comes to rescue his own. So that is the end of Revelation chapter 6. And we want now to begin Revelation 7. Now Revelation 7 is, we would say, a part of the 6th seal. It gives us some more information, but from a different point of view. This information in chapter 7 is not just about events that have taken place, but it's about people. And it's about the people who are getting ready for these events today and how they are to prepare for them. It's also about the time in which we live right now too, as we shall see. So this is a very important chapter, especially the first part, that we understand it. And after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth. Now when it says after these things, it means that John was shown one set of things: the earthquake, the dark day, the falling stars. And then after that, he was shown these 4 angels. But these 4 angels have been holding back the winds of strife for some time. So it says after, but it's the thing is happening together. And after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. So these winds, what are the winds symbolizing? The winds are symbolizing strife. Now, to prove that winds equal strife, we'll also look up some verses. Strife, war, violence. These are the things that the angels are holding back. So the angels are holding back this strife. Now, to illustrate this, let's turn to a couple of scriptures. We'll go to Daniel chapter 7 and verse 2. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 2. So just hold your place in Revelation. We'll be back there shortly. And there we read in Daniel's vision, he said, Daniel spoke and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. So these great beasts were nations, kingdoms that fought against each other. And so it says here, the 4 winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea. Sea represents people, winds represent strife. So we have sea equals people. Now, we also, to prove this too, we can go to Jeremiah 25 verse 32. Jeremiah 25 and verse 32. Excuse me while I find it here. Okay. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, evil shall go forth from nation to nation, and a great whirlwind shall be raised up from the coasts of the earth. So a whirlwind, and once again this is talking about at the end of time, this one, that is what will take place. A whirlwind will come, and that's nation fighting against nation. So, we have these angels, these mighty angels are holding back the winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. So this is important to understand, that in the times in which we live, where nation has been facing off against nation, nations against nations, and we have a lot of strife in the world today between nations, and we also have atomic weapons, and there are now lots and lots of these atomic weapons. People are ignoring what Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword into its place, for those who live by the sword shall die by the sword." Nations which are supposed to be Christian nations have made atomic weapons to use against other people if they so desire. And then those other people, they've made atomic weapons too. And we have this situation in the world where at any time, humanly speaking, these nations will attack each other with their atomic weapons. And you can read in the news, it comes up in my news feed on my phone, that people conjecture, these military people, they conjecture if China and United States had an atomic war, who would win? And the answer is no one would win, as far as I'm concerned. But they conjecture who would win the battle, and would what was left be worth taking? Imagine if they fired a whole range of missiles at each other's big cities and they hit those cities. What a mess it would be. All that radiation, would the earth be worth living in after whoever was going to win won? And of course, the other nations wouldn't just sit back, they would be in on it too, because of all their different allies that they are between each other and so on. So it's angels, it's God who holds back these winds of strife. And we should be very thankful to God that He's doing that. And this is the work of these mighty angels that we're reading about here in the beginning. Let's read verse 2 now. "And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads." So, what does this angel say? Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees. So, are those angels directly going to hurt the earth? No, they're not. But we want to see that those angels are holding back the strife. It says 4 angels. I'm sure there's more than 4 working on that, but there's 4 leading angels, and they are holding back destruction. Now, if they loose their hands, then there will be widespread destruction. These winds will blow again. The angels are holding them back as much as it is deemed right to do. Then we also have nature as well. And in nature, there's very powerful forces too. And God is also holding back these powerful forces in nature through these angels, but also through other means as well. So, when these angels let go, if they were to let go, there would be tremendous, absolute, tremendous strife on the earth. In fact, the 7 last plagues happens when these angels finally let go, because they can only hold on so long. And they're told by this angel who comes from the east to hold on longer. So the angel from the east, who's sent by God, he tells them to hold on. He tells each angel to hold on. And that is what gives God's servants the time to receive the seal of the living God. So it says, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. So they've sealed the servants of God in their forehead. I might just make a little bit of room here because we want to understand this a little bit and see what something in the few minutes we've got remaining of what this seal is. So the seal that the servants get is in the forehead. And this is a sign of the character. That the character in the forehead is the reproduction of God's character, or the Christ-like character. And we'll just go to Revelation 14 for a moment. And we might just read verse 4 of Revelation 7 first. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. If we go over to Revelation 14, verse 1. Here we have the same people mentioned. And I looked, and lo, a Lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. Okay, so let's go back to chapter 7 again now. Now these people that are sealed into the truth, sealed into the truth, come from symbolically the different tribes. So it says, if we read on, it mentions the 12 tribes there. There's some changes in the tribes. Dan is not there, not mentioned. And Joseph is mentioned instead of Ephraim, I think it is. But anyway, it's said to be 144,000. Now, these aren't literal Jews, because we should know from the scriptures that he is not a Jew who is one physically, but he is a Jew who is one spiritually. So we have 12 tribes, which equals 12 groups. And these would be character types with people. God would group them into the different character types. We might look at this more next week when we begin again, talk about this a bit more. I'd like to introduce this thought. They're not literal Jews, because in the time in which we're living, it's about, are you a spiritual Jew? Are you a spiritual Israelite? Are you a spiritual child of God? And these people can be Gentiles, or some of them could be Jews as well. It's open. Salvation and finishing the work is open to everyone in these last days. Everyone has an opportunity. So I think our time is about up. We'll start again on this and talk more about specifically what the seal is and how it is expressed in God's people. But we want to see that there is a character that has been formed in God's people at the end of time, which prepares them for some very difficult times indeed. So we'll stop there and we'll continue in Revelation 7 next week, God willing. Thank you.